Clipping masks in Illustrator. So a clipping mask is like a window through which you view some or all the objects behind the mask. It's kind of like, I call it a cookie cutter effect, because it's almost as though you have your dough rolled out and you have a cookie cutter that you're able to cut through. So I have a document here, and I wanted to show one thing before I get into the clipping mask topic. Under the View menu, Illustrator offers a way that you can zoom in to a certain area of your document and save it as a view. And these views are saved with your file. This particular file has two views. It has Mask 1 and Mask 2. And what it will do is it'll zoom into that view of only locating or looking at that specific area of a document or on a specific artboard. So it's kind of a nice way, if you have a large document, multiple artboards, to be able to zoom in just to one area. So I'm going to go to Mask 1. Now if you look at my layers, being I have multiple things going on that's not visible at the moment, you can see all of them here. I'm going to turn them off because I want you to pay attention to what happens here when I create a mask. So I have individual circles that are located here at the top, and they all are independent. They've not been grouped, they're all by themselves. Then I have a box or a rectangle as a container. Now this rectangle really doesn't matter what the attributes are, what the fill and the stroke, because as I apply my mask I am going to lose those. I can reapply stroke options. However, you probably don't want to put a fill because it will cover up what you are seeing through too. It'll make more sense in a moment. So my top object has to be my mask. So in this case, if I don't know at the moment that this is on top, if I drag it, you'll see, well, yep, it goes on top of all my circles. But I also double check by looking into the Layers panel. So on the Layers panel, you can see that this path is definitely on top of or on the top of the stack above the other circles that I'm using in this top portion of the document. Okay, so then the bottom objects, all of my circles here, become the masked, M-A-S-K-E-D, masked. So my top is the mask, my bottom are the masked. Okay, so to create a clipping mask, I have to select all parties involved. So everything has to be selected. Illustrator, again, can't read my mind, so I have to tell it exactly what I want it to do. And I'm affecting all of these pieces here. So I click and drag. I did a marquee selection again with my selection tool to select everything that I want to be involved. And then I simply go under my object menu, clipping mask, and make. And what it does in my Layers panel, you can see Clip Group. If I expand that, you can see that I get a clipping path at the top. It's underlined. It has a different look to it, and then all of the pieces that are part of that group. So each individual piece I can select. It's as though it's a group. So I'd use my selection tool, my direct selection tool, to go in there and select these individual objects as part of my mask. But you can see I'm refined by or limited by the edge of my mask, that top portion. I can also select that mask and apply a stroke. Let's put the stroke to the front, and let's just click black right here. And I can increase that stroke weight. We'll go to the stroke panel, and I'm going to increase the weight, and you can see I can alter that a bit. However, each of my inside pieces, you know, are cropped, you could say. So this is a clipping group, which we call a clipping mask. Now I can also undo this if I want to. If I select it, remember it thinks it's one object in Illustrator. So if I go under Object again, Clipping Mask, I can release it. And releasing it undoes that clipping group, and you can see that now I have everything all separate again, and I've lost that clipping group. Let me go back and redo it. Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. Okay, so now what if, I'm going to go to my second view here, what if I have multiple objects? Let's turn off the top and turn on these items. and I'll reposition this using my space bar. So here I have a whole bunch of circles. They are grouped. I see that in my layers panel. It indicates this is a group. If I expand it, you can see all the individual circles here. Okay, so if I wanted to apply it, make my mask be a multiple object mask, I first have to convert that to a compound path. So if I want multiple objects as a mask, I have to first make them be a compound path. So I select these 3 circles. Again, I marquee through it. I can do a click. Actually, they're grouped for me, but I can do they're actually a compound path for me. Let me undo that so you can see. I can shift click. Okay, so now here we see our paths. So I can shift click, however, that gets a bit tricky when your fill is none. So in this case, my fill is set to none, so it's hard to select inside. Illustrator doesn't read that there's a color or a fill there, so you'd have to select the edge. So I'm going to shift click this time just to show you a different way of selecting. Shift click, all 3 circles are selected, and now let's go back and redo what I just undid. Compound path and make. Alright, so now I see over here, yep, this is a compound path. When I select one circle, they all are selected, thinking as though they're one object. I select and bring it on top. Remember, my mask has to be on the top. I do a drag to select everything. Now, if I didn't do that, I could select in my layers panel, shift, click, to click these pieces that are involved. So I'm using my little target area here to select all of my objects. So because this is a path, I get 3 circles all at one time, and because my bottom circles are grouped, I just click that group and all of those bottom circles become selected. And then let's go under Object and Clipping Mask and Make. Okay, so this acts just like my single rectangle did previously, just that it's all in the 3. So there's 3 holes, there are 3 masks, and if I expand this, you can see there's my compound. It's a compound clipping mask now because it's compound shape, but it's acting as a clipping mask, so what we call it a compound clipping path or mask. And then here's my group. So if I just select only my group items here, I'm going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard. See how I'm able to move these things, and if I come to the end, you know, it looks as though there's nothing there. So you can do some fun things. You can still edit. Everything is still editable. It's still independent. It just has a mask applied. One more really fun option that is a little bit newer to Illustrator. I'm going to create a rectangle and I'm going to put a stroke on this. So my stroke is on front. Remember, I can go either to color or I can go to swatches, and as long as that stroke is the top little thumbnail, I can apply whatever type of a stroke I want. I'm going to increase the stroke weight. I can either go to my stroke panel or I can go up to the top here under stroke in my options and increase the stroke. And I just want to have a decent border so you can see what's going on here. There's an option in Illustrator and it's called Draw Inside or a Inside Drawing Mode, and it's at the bottom of my tools. So I have a Draw Normal, which is by default what has been set and what you've been working in. There's a Draw Behind, but then there's also a Draw Inside. Now the Draw Inside is very similar to a clipping mask. In fact, it does just about the exact same thing. When I click that option and turn it on, I get these dotted corners. So I indicate that I'm not in my normal drawing mode. I'm in a different type. Something else is going on. So that's your key or alert so that you realize that you're in this drawing mode. So now what I'm able to do is draw shapes inside of this drawing mode. So if I click and drag here, and I'm going to switch this around and put my shapes fill at a different color so we can see what's happening here. Okay, so this is what's going on in layers. I have a clip group. If I open that, you can see it says rectangle. It's underlined just like my clipping masks are underlined. It just doesn't, you know, I didn't do the apply under object and make clipping group. I'm doing sort of a live draw. So I can keep drawing actually and put all of these in here. Very fun and cool way to create a fast clipping mask. Okay. And so once I leave this drawing mode and go back, looking at it, it's acting just the same as my other clipping groups. In fact, look at all three of them. They look identical. This one was the one I created with the draw inside mode. This one was the one that I have a compound clipping path right here because I have multiple masks. I had to make them be compound. And if I turn on my last one up at the very top, this is our traditional, most simple compound mask. So that's how we can apply compound masks. We can make that sort of window through which we see other objects behind.